All right, so once again, my name is Alfred Wanderlingh. I work for Batteries Plus. I've worked at Batteries Plus since 2007, so coming up on way too long at this point. But I definitely enjoy it a lot, and I've been out here a couple times. Well, once remotely during the pandemic era, and then one other time back in, I think, as far back as 2017. So it's been a minute. But I've reached out and wanted to come out here just to go over a few things. So real quick, I'll show you what we got up on the screen here. Two very exciting items that Batteries Plus now exclusively sells through Batteries Plus. It's a portable power bank here on the right. I'll go into further detail about that later. And then if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. I got a point at the end that you can ask, and we'll go through anything that anybody has questions about. But on the left is the new lithium batteries. So not quite sure if anybody's been familiarized with these batteries. They're really new. Not a lot of people are comfortable using them in applications because of that. So that's one of the reasons why I'm out here, to kind of go through some of the features, benefits, things you need to consider about these batteries, and take it from there. So they're not that scary. They're just new and they're different, and they just require different tools to work with them. So, all right, brought some material just to kind of look through. If anybody wanted to kind of read along, you can, but ultimately I pulled information directly off of specification sheets, things that, just helpful information about lithium iron phosphate batteries. So I'll just go through some of the highlights here. It's just basically, this is their way of saying, all right, look, this is why you want to use us versus your traditional sealed lead acid. They briefly mention the battery management system, which is a huge benefit of having lithium when they interact with Bluetooth. A lot of people, when you use batteries, you're often wondering, what percentage charge am I at? How close am I to the end of the life of my battery? Well, now the batteries are smart enough to tell you that. Tell you what's the charge rate, how many cycles have you went through, what's the health of the battery. And the manufacturers can now use this data to help out with warranties too. So it makes it easier to do a warranty on a battery that's actually failing. And I'll go through, I'll show the app later. A couple other things that is a highlight of lithium, and I'll highlight this in the next couple slides. They're lighter weight, they have longer life, and they're faster to charge. And I'll go into detail about that here in a little bit. So I always like to not tell you exactly why you should buy something because it's 12 volts, 8 amp hours. Instead, tell you what that means in relation to why you should use it. So that's what I like about features and benefits. Trusted performance is highlighting the fact that lithium iron phosphate is a safe chemistry for lithium. It's one of the safest chemistries out there. Not like some of the issues that have sprung up in the past with earlier lithium technologies. So that's one of the reasons why this is being adapted industry-wide, is because it is safe. And I'll go over that in a little bit. They're lightweight. If this was lead acid, I don't think I would have been willing to carry this into the facility today, but I did, even though I missed the door once and had to do a lap. It still wasn't that bad. It's about half the weight of your typical lead acid battery, which can be big when you're out in the field, lugging a bunch of equipment around. You're wanting to find ways to just lighten that load a little bit. 2,000 cycles of lifetime. I've got another slide that says, what does that really mean? What does 2,000 cycles mean? Well, I'll give you a good example. An average lead acid battery will only last you about 300 to 500 cycles, depending upon how you use it. And that is a lot of usage on a battery. And it's related to how you're using the battery, which I have a slide specific for that as to why lithium is a benefit to use versus lead acid. And so I'll go into that in a little bit. Maintains charge and storage. It was one of the key features of lithium is, you can charge up the battery and leave it, and it's not going to self-discharge like a lead acid battery is going to do. The terminals aren't going to corrode and get your equipment all messed up. It's safe to leave in storage. And when you have the app, let's say you got an event coming up, see what the battery's charge is, throw it on the charger real quick. It's 100%, you're good to go. That brings up the Bluetooth point right there. And then the warranty. I didn't really bring up much literature about the smaller batteries because that's more for different types of industry usage. But depending upon the radio, if you have a 20-watt system or a 100-watt system or something greater than that, if you have something little as 20 watts, probably could use one of the smaller batteries, which would be a lot lighter. So next slide, more of the highlights of the battery that I've already kind of went through. But just wanted to highlight to you that if you wanted to review this literature on your own, have it on file so that you could review it, decide if this is the approach you want to take. We do have spec sheets that I do plan to share with the team here that they can pass on, that you can review this information in as much detail. But it's basically going over the same things that I'm going to be going over in the next couple slides. This is the other section of that spec sheet. So it just goes through right now all the available deep cycle options for lithium. So to highlight what that means, deep cycle is specifically in the battery world, you have several different types of batteries. The ones that we're familiar with when it comes to radios are runtime batteries, which are also termed deep cycle. They're just designed specifically for runtime, not for any starting cranking power applications. So you would not want to use this in your car to start the engine. That's not the right application for this. It's specifically for runtime. So one of the highlights is sometimes when it comes to batteries and sizing batteries, the biggest issue that most people run into is space, size. For radio systems, the battery's likely external. Not really a big factor, not a big issue, but I mention it because that's one of the highlights of lithium is there's more amp hours in the physical footprint than in a lead acid battery. So your typical size battery that is a group size 31, which I have up on the chart right here, is 125 amp hours in a lithium. In a lead acid, you're going to get about 100 to 105 amp hours. So right there, you're getting a little bit of a boost in runtime. So I wanted to highlight that so that you could see that's one of the ways that you're getting longer life. There's another way that you get longer life, and I'll go through that on another slide. But some safety tips that's one of the reasons why. So lithium batteries should be stored at 100% state of charge. So what I was mentioning before, you fully charge it, you leave it, and then when you got an event coming up, you can pull up an app and look at it and see, all right, yeah, this is how charged the battery is. If it's fully charged, you're good to go. Store in a cool, dry, well-ventilated location. That's a given for just about anything out there. You don't really want to store anything in a temperature sensitive environment where it gets really hot or really cold. Charge the battery before use. If it's below 50% state of charge, that's, I mean, it's a no-brainer right there. If the battery is charged in higher temperatures, charge it more frequently. That also goes without saying. When a battery is exposed to higher temperatures, it discharges more rapidly. So that's why they're mentioning that. If it doesn't hold a charge, have it tested. But if you have the app, that's an easy way to test it. So just to highlight, with one of the first slides I mentioned, it's lighter weight, half the weight, longer life, 10 times the life and warranty. So deep cycle batteries, historically, when they're lead acid, they only have a 1-year warranty at best. It's not because the battery's designed to only last a year or two. It's because of the way that they're treated. They're treated poorly by 90% of the people who buy them. I'm actually probably being generous. A lot of times batteries are purchased on off seasons when we're not using something, it's at the end of the season and we're like, I'm just going to replace the battery. Then you wait all season to use it. It's not charged. And so anything that goes in a seasonal application, like a deep cycle battery, which is typically considered to be a marine battery for boats. That's why they make them. That's one of the biggest applications for them. Those types of batteries often sit for a whole year until the boat goes in the water. So you only get a year warranty out of your battery. I'm not sure how frequently we go out in the field and switch to a battery, but I'm guessing it's not as frequent as we're stationary with AC voltage. So with that being said, that is a highlight for lithium. It's not just sitting around going bad while you're not using it. It has rated cycles that the battery goes through, and that's what determines its overall life. So you could get a lot longer life out of the material in the battery as long as it's stored in the right conditions. That goes back to the temperature neutral environment, no humidity, and other things like that. Oh, the faster charging. So I put that on there because I didn't want to forget this. One of the highlights of lithium is you can opportunity charge it really fast, which means, you know, you might realize, all right, I don't have enough voltage in this currently, and I have to use it within a short period of time. You can throw a very fast charge into the battery, and the battery will accept that charge very fast. Whereas in lead acid, there's about a period where the battery hits about 75% charge, and it slows down to an absorption phase, which then takes a really long time to complete. So that's important to consider if you're in a rush, because if you're only at that absorption phase, you've already lost 20% of your battery life. And in a deep cycle battery, you don't want to drain the battery below 50% of its total life. So that only leaves you with 30% of the runtime. And the reason for that, and that's one of the most important things, if I were to say anything in this whole presentation, the most important thing that people miss and don't realize with deep cycle batteries is when you drain them below 50% of their total runtime capacity inside the battery, you damage it. It's damaged. So you can still use it. It's still going to run your device and everything's still going to operate. And in some applications that have a motor, like let's say a golf cart that's running on a set of deep cycle batteries, the motor will start to slow down. So you know at that point, all right, I need to charge this. But some other equipment might not do that. So that's a highlight of lithium, is you don't have that risk of, am I at 50%? Am I above 50%? You can drain this battery to 100% safely, and it'll come back without any issues. The recommended depth of discharge, and I have a slide on this later, is 85%. That'll give you up to 5,000 charge cycles if you only drain this battery to 85% each time you use it. If you drain it fully, you get 2,000 cycles, which is why they tell you 2,000 cycles, because they expect people to drain it fully. So that's where this slide comes into play. The 100% depth of discharge, you're only at 2,000 cycles. 80% depth of discharge, you're going well beyond 3,000. Standard lead acid batteries, 100% depth of discharge, you're sitting somewhere between 0 and 500. 80, I'd say even in some cases it could be as little as like 10 if you fully drain a battery, especially if you don't recharge it, because the plates, if you've ever seen corrosion on the top of a battery, they start to almost similarly sulfate on the inside when they're not charged and they're left dead. So this is a key point too. I mentioned this earlier with the fact that lithium, one of the key points of lithium is that it has 100% of its total power until you get to 0%. So you get the full wattage consumption out of the battery until it's at 0. With other batteries, once you get to about halfway discharge, 70% discharge, you're sitting at about 60% of the battery's capacity. So where that really comes into play in the lithium market and where they really highlight it is, and I always go back to this, is golf carts. Because if you have a golf cart and it's running off a deep cycle battery, you want it to have that extra oomph the whole time you're using it. And that's one of the features of it. Whereas, you get really low with the lead acid and it's going to slug and not go that fast up and down hills. So longer life and capacity, because you're getting the full usage out of your battery until it gets to zero, longer life out of capacity because of the charge that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought with that one. That was related to how quick you can charge it. But essentially the cycles. Overall, lithium's going to last you a lot longer than lead acid, especially in the right applications. Now, this is key because this is one of the things that I've been asked to highlight and talk about in this presentation. Is one of the biggest issues with lithium right now, and one of the challenges they're having with bringing it to market, is charging the battery. The battery has to be charged above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you are out in the field and it's below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, you don't have a way to charge this battery. There was a recent development in battery technology made by a company I'm not going to name because I'm being recorded and I don't want to have any issues, that had a feature in it where when it was time to charge the battery, it would engage a heater on the inside of the battery to get it above 32 degrees. So the best I've been able to tell, and companies are a little bit not willing to share this information for good reason, that technology has been put on a hold without any ETA on when it's going to be coming back. Where there's a lot of people out there, utility companies, wanting to put these batteries in monitoring stations where the temperature drops below 32 degrees. So that is a big issue. So if you see a battery technology out there that's boasting it can do this, it can charge below 32 degrees, give me a call. I'll tell you whether or not it's something that you want to purchase, because it might be something from before the product was put on hold. Then, like I said, I'm not going to name names. I'm not here to do that. Just here to highlight that. And that's a struggle right now. So I imagine once that technology is developed system-wide, that won't be an issue. But that's essentially how it works, is it's got to heat it up on the inside. I guess it leaves some of the power remaining, that heats it up, then it's able to charge. These batteries, they can't be charged that way. But I have somewhat of a dual solution for your field exercises for radios that I wanted to basically bring that up to highlight. So here's what the app looks like on your phone, showing you the charge rate, showing you the voltage, the current, how many cycles, how many minutes you have left on the battery life. I mean, we all like cool, interesting tools that help us achieve whatever goal we're trying to make. And this is, for me, somebody who's been in the battery industry for a very long time, I've wanted a tool like this. It just makes life really easy. And I could not imagine having an activity that I do after using something like this that relies on how charged is the battery, how many cycles do I have, something that I consider to be so important that I don't want this to fail. Like this type of technology, it prevents that from being a worry. You have all the information right at your hands. I was going to bring a video where we have a lot of Bass Pro Fishing sponsorships where they use our batteries. They like it because they have the app where they can monitor it, and we sponsor them. But I did not bring that because it's going to take up time. So this just shows you how easy it is to link up the battery once you're using the app. It's as simple as you open up the app, you go into the settings, If you've ever linked up anything Bluetooth to your phone before, then I'm telling you something you don't need to hear. It's pretty simple. You hit it on the app then there's a spot where it will detect the battery. So the app will search for nearby batteries and it'll display a list of batteries. There's serial codes on here where, you know, obviously, unless you bought like a bunch of these batteries, you're only going to see one that shows up. You link it, you connect, and then you're good to go. So, what can you track in the app? We just saw pretty much voltage, current, power, cycles, full charge capacity, estimated discharge time. It helps with the 10-year warranty, pretty much makes it a no-brainer for us. So it does help gauge. You're going to add an accessory to your equipment. How did that affect the total runtime? Can I add something else to my setup? Things like that, that makes having this type of battery gauge pretty useful for people who like that information. For me, I get that question all the time. You know, the number one question I can't answer at the store is, hey, I have this really cool device. It uses voltage. They'll tell me amp hours. How much runtime can I get using this battery? And I'm like, well, there's other things to consider. You know, I could give you a rough estimate, but I can't give you an exact. This app allows you to do that yourself, which is very important for anybody who's ever tried to determine how long is something going to last me in a battery setup. It's not an easy thing to determine.
The $64,000 question is, you know, it's half the weight, but is it double the cost of a SLA? I mean, what's the approximate cost difference?
So, unfortunately, I left the quotes in my car that I realized just now. Let's see. Yeah, you can definitely, and I can send out the quotes that I have because I put.
But then the club, we get a 65% discount.
It's pretty close to that. I mean, you guys do get a pretty good discount, but
also you can put that on the raffle table right over here.
We'll sell a lot of those raffle tickets tonight. I guarantee you, if that happens, because that'd be a steal. Yeah, it'd be probably your best raffle ever because these aren't cheap. If I'm going ballparking off the top of my head, this one's a group size 27. You're looking at probably anywhere from $400 to $600.
Okay, it's not as expensive as I thought you would say.
No, I do have some pricing.
LA batteries have gotten expensive. They're easily over 200, 170.
They're getting more expensive, and they're getting harder to grab when the supply chains get messed up too.
And I think of the CPAPs and how expensive the CPAP battery is, you know, because it has the name of the CPAP manufacturer on it.
Yes,
You know?
and a lot of that also has to do, and one of my early things to consider. So those built-in battery systems, a lot of times they take care of all the worry of liability because the number one thing is health whenever you're dealing with the health thing. So to talk to your point, sometimes those fully encapsulated systems end up being actually a better solution than battery, inverter, and all these different things that you're factoring or you have to maintain, carry around with you. You have 4 or 5 different things. So I'm glad you brought that up because that
cycle lead acid on scout outings for a decade.
Yeah.
I literally haul the marine battery around.
Yeah, and it's not easy.
The CPAP is 12 volt, luckily, so I just
And it's not easy. It's not. So
especially on like a 30-mile hike and back.
yes, yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I was asked to highlight as well are the chargers for lithium batteries. Being out in the field, it's hard to charge something. You do need an inverter in most cases. There are some setups out there for solar panels. If it's not designed to charge a lithium battery, chances are it's going to take forever to charge up, and it's not a good solution if it's solar. But I do have a solar solution that I wanted to offer related to one of the first slides. But I wanted to highlight the fact that if you do want a charger, we make chargers specifically for these types of batteries, multiple bank chargers. They have recovery mode features in case the battery goes to sleep, which if you leave it at a 0 depth of discharge for a long time, the battery can go to sleep as a safety measure. So didn't want to go into too much detail about the chargers because it's pretty much the only thing highlighting that makes it different than other chargers is the recovery mode. This is what I really wanted to highlight because I think that this is something that people at the club can really use and take advantage of depending upon whatever situations you might be in. This could be a good thing for you at the scout outings. I mean, it can be used in multiple different applications. I recently sent some to my mom after the hurricane that went through Tampa because they were without power for a few days, and my mom takes care of my 96-year-old aunt. So we don't want that situation to happen again. So essentially, this is a portable power station. I'm sure some of you might have run into this with some other brands out there. We have designed our own. So, you know, we were talking about pricing earlier for what it is. And if you look at this 1,500 watt station here, that's almost $1,400. Let's just say what it is. That you could bring with you on a vacation, and you don't have to worry about your devices ever dying, or you could hook up a 65-inch television to that and watch TV.
So it has 110 output in USB, bro.
Yes, this one actually has 3 AC outlets. I actually have a little bit more in depth about each one and the outlets and everything, but here's a solar panel that you can hook up to the unit that will recharge the unit for you when you're out in the field. So that's, yeah, not at all. And they're excellent units. So just to highlight each one a little bit further, the one on the left, the 300 watt, the smallest one, has 2 USB-C, 2 USB-A, 2 DC outlets, and 2 standard 120 volt. It can power devices with power demands up to a maximum of 600 watts. It charges with a car charger, a USB-C to USB-C, in case you have one of those newer vehicles that don't have the car charger easily accessible, AC, wall charger, and the solar panel, which is sold separately. So for this one, it takes 3 hours to charge by the solar panel. So you drain it, you're out on a camping expedition or you're doing a field day, 3 hours, you're back in business. So larger one, 600 watts, you know, you're getting one less USB-C outlet, and that's because this one doesn't have a USB-C charger that can also be used as an input outlet or output. 2 DC, 2 standard. So pretty much the same, but with one more USB-A, one less USB-C. It can handle twice as much power, which takes twice as long to recharge as a result. Now, the really cool one, this is the one I like the most, is the 1,500. 1,500, you're getting more outlets, still 2 DC outlets, getting the 3 AC outlets, which is huge, 3,000 watts of power. You can do the car charger, AC wall charger, solar panel, 1 hour AC charge time. So, yeah, one hour plugged into the wall, you're back in business. Now, 15 and a half hours on the car charger, that's, you know, if we're going on maybe a long trip somewhere and you want to recharge it while you're driving, that might work. You need 2 solar panels to charge this. It'll get you back up in 6.5 hours. So if, you know, you're out camping, best example I use for this, you know, it dies overnight, you charge it throughout the day, you have it again at night. All of these units have lights on them. This one, you can kind of see it right there. And they have a really cool display panel that I wanted to highlight. Just like your app, you're seeing how much percent do you have? How many hours do you have? How many watts are you consuming? What's currently plugged in? So
Could the batteries be replaced, 5 or 10 years from now?
in the units themselves, no, they're not replaceable batteries. So essentially, it's one of those units that you're getting the 2-year warranty. It's designed to last you as long as this battery would last you.
Which could easily be 5 years.
Good, but it depends on how do you use it, and where is it stored? But it could be 10 years. Not in replacement of sealed lead acid just yet. It's mostly due to too few options available, so the price is pretty huge. I've only run into actually one inquiry for that, so that's the only reason why I know. Yeah.
I guess the question would be, I know you. Real quick, I guess the question is, how would we size it then? I mean, if I knew, say for example, I had a 80 watt per hour demand, how would we size that based on, like if I said I know that I'm going to have a maximum of 100 watt hour demand. How do we know which unit and say I needed that for out of my sleep about 8 hours? How long would I need that?
So,
I don't know.
fortunately, and this is feedback I'm going to provide after using the tool to set up this presentation. We have a runtime calculator on our website.
Okay.
Yes. However, all it does is recommend which of the 3 units you should use. It doesn't say it's going to last this long or that long. It basically has a list of common items that you would take out into the field. I was hoping there was radio, but there wasn't on there. But there's they have wattage listed next to it. So you could essentially look at that and say, all right, I want 8 hours at 60 watts.
Yeah.
And it'll recommend which size unit you should purchase. So it's not exact science, but we're getting there.
Thank you.
Products American made or are they overseas?
That's a good question. They are not made in America, unfortunately. Yes, there's a lot of lithium is made over in China. I mean, when we have manufacturing plants in Vietnam and Malaysia, actually, for the fact that they can avoid the tariffs by doing that. So, current tariffs, exactly. So we don't know what's on the horizon. So get them while they're cheap. But yeah, no.
Talk about the solar panels there.
Yes.
How big are they?
They're probably about this big. They're big. They're not like small.
Square meter.
Yeah. They're probably about that's about fair. I had to recently lug one of them around pretty far, so yeah. And they fold, I believe they fold in half. So, and you can carry them with a handle. So if you want to look at the picture, you see where they like fold in half and then they have the handle on both sides. So did I answer your question fully? Okay.
You know what they use there? DCOs.
The amp output for the DC outlets. I didn't actually include that on here, but it is listed in the there's a sheet we have for specifications that goes through what the output is on the DC outlets on those units. I don't have that information, sorry. But I'm going to leave my card, and if you really want me to get you that information, just shoot me an email, or you could even text me and I will get that for you. I'll leave a couple of cards right here. All right. Any other questions before we move on? the lithium iron phosphate batteries. I'm not sure what lithium battery they use in the Teslas,
I think it
but
depends on the model year. They change
Yes.
the chemistry all the time.
yes, there's a couple different types of lithium. The one that is being introduced in the batteries across the board is the lithium iron phosphate because of some of the safety features related to it.
The lead marine battery, and it's exposed to water, I assume it's not gonna go up.
No, because these are completely sealed. They're like IP68 rated, I believe. So you don't have, I mean, obviously you're not going to want to test it. It's not something you ever want to test with lithium, getting it wet.
So I had my phone separate because the battery was, you're getting ready to explode.
Yes.
So it was pixel. Here's what they do. They sent me a new pixel. Same battery. They wanted the old one back. Batteries made in China. So this was the phone had already
Yeah.
separated.
Yes, a lot. And it actually is expensive to recycle those batteries because we have to put them in steel drums surrounded with vermiculite so that they don't catch on fire and explode while in transit. Yeah, and that's primarily an issue with like lithium polymer and lithium ion technology, is they're more in like a different type of system that can balloon up when they get overcharged or get really old.
Great.
Yes.
And the first battery is working.
And that's why they don't use lithium ion in these, is for that reason. The thermal runoff. So all right, I don't think I have many other slides. I was just going to quickly go through lead acid, like, you know, some of the issues with lead acid versus lithium. Should use only 30 to 50% of the battery's life. Average cycle life is 300. I think I pretty much already went through most of this. I know we're getting close to time, I think. Sure.
What is a safe storage temperature of lithium iron phosphate? Like, not the actual operational temperature, but if I wanted to store one in my car mounted under my seat to run a radio off of, it would be periodically in really high temperatures, or I guess however hot a car gets in the summer.
So that is a good question. They only list on the spec sheet operational and charging.
Yeah.
They don't list storage. You got me curious now, because some of them do list. Yeah, and if it is listed, it might be like right here, and I cut it off. So I can look at the spec sheet and see, but most batteries they'll say room temperature for storage. That's like 71, 72 degrees. And they say that because for lead acid, and that's why I'm pulling this off of lead acid, not lithium. The 72 degrees room temperature, anything above that drains it quicker. Anything below that can negatively affect the battery once you get below freezing. So,
Your recommendation, if I wanted to have something permanently installed in my car that I could run like a crossband repeater for.
which type to put in the vehicle for that?
Sure, like.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you are safe with the wiring portion of it, this is going to be a safe battery to use in that environment. Well, so storage, so from what I've learned about lithium is the storage aspect of it with the cold temperature isn't as big of an issue as the charging. So if it's stored outside and it gets below 32 degrees, you're going to have to bring that battery inside to warm it up before you charge it. So that's the biggest thing. If you leave it in your vehicle, the biggest issue you could run into is how frequently are you charging it? You know, are you trying to use your car alternator to charge it, or using a car charger that's hooked up to it through an inverter system? You know, that would be more of aspect on battery life than, Yeah, that would be your biggest concern with storing it in your vehicle would be the state of charge while it's sitting in your vehicle.
I'm not concerned with that, so I can get that figured out. My biggest concern that I have to figure out is just like, how hot is it gonna get under my seat in the summer, in the sun? And is it gonna either significantly damage it or potentially catch fire? I know that thermal runaway temperature of lithium iron phosphates, like, close to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so I don't think that'd be an issue.
You would have to worry about if your car got above 131 degrees.
What would be charging if they're not above?
But even just storing it, I would say is because for discharge or anything like that, they're recommending not to be above that temperature. So if you put a thermometer in your car, I know it sounds ridiculous, in the middle of the summer, you'll be able to tell. And I know that doesn't give you an answer right now, but and you might solve that problem by putting something in your front windshield that will lower the temperature so it doesn't get that hot. Park under a tree. I mean, and I only say that because I don't have any trees or coverage in my driveway, and it's something I struggle with all the time is my car getting too hot. So,
You could go with paint out to the battery, you can blow itself cool on a little climate.
Yeah. I know, so that's what I'm wondering, and I could probably date on, I could probably just do it like the summer and get a problem, but.
so just to wrap it all up, the final 20% can't be fast charged. We talked about that earlier. The initial 80% can be fast charged, but it has to be monitored because it can get really hot. The acid can boil out of it. A lot of things can happen that you don't have happen with lithium. If you don't fully charge the battery, the areas of the plates that don't get fully charged will go bad. You don't have to worry about the noxious fumes. So for you in your vehicle, you wouldn't have to worry about the lead acid smell, which is like the rotten egg sulfur smell. Maintenance requirements. Lithium, you don't have to maintain with distilled water. AGM, you also don't have to maintain with distilled water, but they can easily be overcharged if you don't charge them right, which at that point, the gases do come out of the battery because they're vented, and then you essentially lose a large portion of your battery life. So 28 pounds versus 53 pounds is an example I'm using for this battery right here. This is 100 amp hours, so you can safely use 85 to 100 of the amp hours as opposed to lead acid, which in this case, you'd only be able to use 35 to 50 amp hours. The extended cycles, we've already went through that. And there we go. That was it. So, thank you. Thanks. So with that being said, I'm going to leave my card here. If anody has any questions about any of those.
Stick it on top of the battery and just leave the battery.
Just leave that. We'll raffle off the cards, and whoever gets the cards gets an extra discount on their first order. There you go. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Biggest local market, what do you get your store? What's your biggest local?
For these types of batteries,
Who's buying?
marine. So the